Hey guys, Steven here, Fanatic Perspective. So it's a new day, got some new energy, press conferences today. Tom Herman, the introduction of Mike Yurcich, and Chris Ash. We're going to break down the position changes, all that and more. But first, I want to give a quick shout out to our video sponsors, Bosses Ranch. Guys, they are actually going to be helping us out and sponsoring some XFL content. So we're going to have some coming here very, very soon. Check them out, HEB, cold produce section. Those of you in Central Texas have been doing a great job. Houston, Texas, for my folks out in Houston, supporting the Houston Roughnecks, let's pick it up. Get yourself some Boston's Ranch. I know y'all got some HEBs out there. Cold produce, HEB, check them out. So Tom Herman comes on today, suited and booted. You can tell there's a new level of excitement and energy. And before I get into just my big takeaways, because that's what we'll do here today, I know I'm starting this video off in somewhat poor form by saying to be continued. But guys, I want to have a live chat discussion about this. I think there was a lot to unpack from today's press conference, from the position changes to some of the coaches' comments on things that stuck out to them, and I'll do the best I can to just navigate through this here today. But would love to talk with y'all and just want to see what folks' impressions are, as well as hit me up in the comments on this video and let's chat. And as I point out links for Boss's Ranch, also subscribe and like and share. It's huge to growing our platform. I think we're almost at 6,000 subscribers, so hopefully we can break that threshold here at the conclusion of this video. But I will say with Tom Herman and just this program, guys, to me, coaches, specifically around Texas, things are always going to sound good in the offseason, especially before spring, coming out of spring. Everything's going to sound like, oh, we're ready to make that move. Like, these guys are also salesmen. I know that because I'm a salesman, right? So when they get in front of the media especially, they're not just selling the hope of what this program is going to be from a revenue and tickets and wanting to have that buzz around their program, but also from a recruiting standpoint. We're now in the dead period. We just wrapped up the 2020 recruiting cycle. That's actually what Tom Herman led off with in conclusion of National Signing Day, but also transitioning to 2021, highlighting the new coaches. Things are changing, formation, schemes, all that. But at the end of the day, it's still about wins and losses. Right? It's still about the fact that Oklahoma has won 5 consecutive Big 12 titles. Texas hasn't been in the mix in over a decade, and we have to get it done. So I like what I've heard from a lot of these. We heard a lot of things today. We've seen a lot of changes that we wanted to see from a coaching staff perspective, from a position group perspective for some of these players. But at the end of the day, it still comes down to wins and losses starting in the fall. Period. So just want to, make sure we still keep our eye. There's nothing, I'm not going to go beyond cautiously optimistic, right? Just with what we've seen. So I'm going to leave it at that. Now, some big takeaways I had from what Tom Herman said. BJ Foster. He's going to be having shoulder surgery. They actually waited because of some nerve issues, and I don't know how it all works. I am not a medical doctor, but BJ Foster will be having shoulder surgery, and I believe he's going to be missing the spring. I think Tom Herman said he should be back for summer conditioning, though. So in terms of the new defense, where BJ Foster's going to fit, it sounds like he's going to remain at safety as we get into some of the other positional changes that we've seen for Chris Ash's scheme. But BJ Foster is somebody who, regardless of where he lines up on the field, I'm very, very excited about. And I'm glad the brother's going to get an opportunity to get healthy and get that repaired, because I made the weekend at Bernie jokes all the time about him in the Kansas game. But, that was somebody who, in retrospect, I wish we had shut him down a little bit, because he's such a fierce competitor. He's going to go out there. The level of physicality that he does play with and the speed at which he plays with, I don't know if it was beneficial for BJ to be out there with the injury that he had. But again, I'm not a doctor. I don't know if it was something where it didn't necessarily get worse by him playing more. So that was a big takeaway for me, just hearing the news of the impending BJ Foster surgery. Now, the first position change or position update, I should say, that Tom kind of hit on in his presser was Roschon Johnson staying in the running back room, which is huge because that now leads to us allowing Jordan Whittington to move on to slot receiver, which is what he was originally recruited for. And, more importantly, how well Roschon played, natural fit at the position, the physicality he brought, the natural ability as a runner, everything that he did to kind of salvage that run when we were really, really banged up last year. And the example that he set as a team player. I mean, this is somebody who now will be looked at as a leader moving forward. Tom Herman talking about Roschon Johnson coming to them again and, obviously saying what can I do best for the team, and that should be noted. But I also think, the brother's very smart, and you can tell in understanding of thinking from a standpoint of what's best for my football future. Next level, how do I project? What's the best position I can do to keep playing football beyond Texas? And it's probably the running back position. When you look at and that also goes into what we saw the conversation with DeMarvion Overshown, right? But as it relates to Roschon, it takes pressure off of Bijan coming in the fall, who everyone has anointed him as the end-all, be-all, and the savior, and he's a magnificent recruit and prospect. But now I don't have to put everything on his plate. I have three really, really good. The running back room, Stan Drayton, kudos to you. I like what I see there because, Daniel Young aside, I now have Keontae Ingram, Roschon Johnson, and Bijan Robinson all there, who are, that's as good a group as I'll get, probably outside of Oklahoma State, featuring the beast that is Chuba Hubbard. And I think also, Roschon looking at, if I go to the quarterback room, how many reps am I really going to get? When you look at Hudson Card there, Casey Thompson being entrenched, and we talked about him last video, the impact that he's starting, the leaps he's made on the practice field. And then obviously General Ellinger, right? So, hey, I played here. The team trusts me. I trust them. And for my long-term football development, this is, I think, the best move for Roschon. So I'm happy to see that development play out the way it did, and getting that done in the spring so he can also get acclimated to the offensive changes, get more reps as a running back. We forget he hasn't played. Even last spring he was solely a quarterback. So this was something that was a short-term transition for him, and also keeping carries down, keeping bodies fresh, I think will be huge. I think this benefits Keontae Ingram. We can see him be very, very effective with the touches he gets. Roschon be very, very effective with the touches he gets. Not loading up Bijan Robinson's plate when he gets here, but allowing him to come in and just be an explosive downhill runner that we've seen on film from him in Arizona. This is a big, big win here for Texas and how this thing is playing out. We heard Tom Herman talk about Joshua Moore and, kind of the reintroduction to him competing for game snaps. Hey, he's been with the team. He practiced with us all last year, but now we're going to actually see him compete for snaps on the, at the X or the Z, which is going to be really, really fun to watch with the competition. Him, Marcus Washington, Alvonte Woodard, Brendan Eagles. So, that group is, really, really starting to solidify and strengthen itself. Let me not even forget about the brother Kennedy Lewis as well, who I like what I saw in a limited role from him last season. I mean, a lot of, some of y'all came at me about, Joshua Moore ain't that special, blah, blah, blah. Look, just because you haven't seen it yet doesn't mean that the gifts and the physical tools aren't already there. I see that with this group, okay? Especially with a veteran, Sam Ehlinger, who I'll get to a little bit later. Another takeaway from Tom Herman that he touched on, how the special teams will work. He said it very clearly. Jay Bulwer is fully in charge of special teams. Yes, Coleman Hustler will have some input. Yes, Andre Coleman will have some input. Tom Herman will have input as well as he goes into more of a CEO mode and can kind of help out where he is and not be fully responsible for offensive game planning. I think that's a big, that's something that's going to be very beneficial for Texas. And from a special team standpoint, just hearing that and seeing what wrinkles we can add to not just be technically sound and fundamentally sound in special teams, but have it be advantageous for us to figure out how to break this Oklahoma streak and win this conference. What else do I have here? And then the last thing I wanted to touch on as we get into position changes that Tom Herman brought up, the understanding of I need to communicate with NFL evaluators. He was talking about DeMarvion Overshawn as he moves to the weak side inside linebacker position, will linebacker from safety. And, he said, hey, DeMarvion came to us and was like, hey, how can I get on the field? Get all that. But I like the fact that he followed up that comment with, hey, we've been talking to some NFL guys in terms of what they want to see and where he projects. That's really, really big. We've talked about recruiting and how it's impacted us negatively, the fact that we're not sending guys to the league, at a higher rate than what we had been doing before, and not, the lack of high draft picks we've had, the complete lack of high draft picks we've had. So listening to the NFL guys and working in sync with them, that's what a lot of these other programs are doing and how they're featuring and showcasing their high-level talent. It will be beneficial for Texas. I think all of us as Texas fans, I've made the Isaiah Simmons comps over and over again on this channel. Many of you in the comments have chimed in. Many of you on Instagram, message boards, whether it's Orange Bloods or Inside Texas or whatever, have talked about, hey, we need, we all see it, but so many times here at Texas, even in the past, where it's like, oh, we just put this player here, he could do so much for us, and it would help his NFL stock, and we don't do it, right? So at least us being aligned as fans with the coaching staff, we've all said, hey, let's see Overshawn at linebacker. I remember when he came out of high school, they even said he had the frame to eventually move to linebacker, and that's where everyone saw his long-term fit. So for that to see itself finally playing out and come to fruition where he can be an absolute stud and playmaker, he can be as good as anybody on this defense. And we're talking about a defense featuring a Joseph Osai, a Caden Stearns, and a BJ Foster. DeMarvion Overshawn can be as good as anybody on this defense. Hear me, okay? So this is a big move, and again, us being aligned as fans on what we're seeing, and we're getting what we're asking for, right? Now, they still got to win. I'm not getting off that. That's how I led this video. Winning. They still got to win. But seeing Overshawn move over is a big sign and a positive sign for us. So I've been kind of jumping around the position changes. Let's go through everything. We talked about Roschon staying at running back, Jordan Whittington sliding over to slot receiver. The other offensive move that is very, very notable, Malcolm Epps been working out with the tight ends. Now, they haven't been practicing yet, but in terms of the position that he'll be asked, which they call the Y in this offense, and hopefully Mike Yurcich has a plan to utilize him as a flex tight end where he's, being asked to, destroy people in the seams and do big man stuff that we see a lot of people around the country utilizing their tight ends. And even looking at the brother Thaddeus Moss at LSU, how he was deployed in the playoff games, those are things we can see from a Malcolm Epps. A lot of you guys have said, oh, well, if we move him to tight end, he doesn't have the physicality to compete there. Well, let's give him an opportunity to develop. Yancey McKnight, off-the-field conditioning, strength and conditioning program. He's still a very, very young player and somebody who has a ton of gifts and finished the season on a high note, and has a rapport with Sam Ehlinger. So those are very, very key things where we can get Malcolm Epps on the field without having to pull out one of our quicker, speeder outside receivers. This is very, very good. And getting him matched up on some of these linebackers and safeties that he's got to learn. Yes, he's got to learn how to use his body better, box out, those type of things, those big man techniques, if you will. But that's also onus that we got to put on the coaches to get him developed and playing up to his talent level. We as fans all see it. We as fans have said if we could ever use him in that type of manner, look out. Well, here it is. Now, from a defensive standpoint, Anthony Cook moving over to the nickel, and then Josh Thompson, who was playing more nickel, moving to outside corner. And we heard a lot about Josh Thompson, not just from Tom Herman, but also from Chris Ash as he took the podium. And what he saw on tape and the speed and the physicality. And I thought one of the interesting things that Chris Ash said about Josh Thompson, as well as Chris Brown, was how their teammates responded to their play. So they have some sort of influence over others. Now, those are two guys who are older players, Chris Brown and Josh Thompson. I think Josh Thompson, since he only played, 4 games, he'll be a redshirt junior because he was in that 2017 class. And then we know Chris Brown will be a redshirt senior. So, right away, I think that's another thing to pay attention to. Those two brothers being highlighted by the new coach off of what he saw on film. And I think this is just a good fit for both players that are going to be flopping in terms of Anthony Cook and Josh Thompson. Anthony Cook has better hips to me. And, whether it's trail man technique or just getting his hands on somebody and playing coverage against some of these quicker guys in the slot that we will see deployed in the Big 12 and getting aligned, I think Anthony Cook is a better player for that particular role. Josh Thompson is very, very fast, but in terms of that twitchiness and those hips, those are two different things. Now, because Josh Thompson is a very physical player and very fast, I think that outside corner spot is a better place for him. And I'm glad the coaches are seeing that and recognizing that. And I hopefully he can have a home run year to get himself draftable because he does have the physical tools. It's just a question of production. So that's that. I think that's a move, again, putting players in the best position to develop and play with confidence and play fast. Now, the other thing, too, we heard about was this hybrid jack position with Joseph Osai and Byron Vaughns. A lot of you guys very astutely said, hey, Steve, how come you didn't mention Byron Vaughns in the linebacker discussion when you made your previous video? Well, I knew this was coming. They are going to use this jack position as their speed pass rusher, unleash havoc type of role. So they are assuming this position within the front, right? So on that defensive line, Tom Herman said they will have drop responsibilities every now and again, which I really, really liked hearing, because going completely away from the 3-man line, you want to be versatile. You want to have a multiple type look, because there are opponents that you will face throughout the season where that look will be more advantageous for you, where you can show some of those creative things and drop somebody out. So I'm glad that they said, hey, we're not just going to be, hitting our head against the wall and married to just, we're going to bring 4 every single time on first and second down, right? So again, they're telling us everything we want to hear. They really, really are. This is really a fan-friendly press conference that we heard today by this entire staff. Excuse me. But, this jack position, I looked at Byron Vaughns and Joseph Osai as pass rushers. Now, we know Joseph Osai, having played some inside linebacker last season, has that skill set to do those things. So he is tailor-made for this role. And it sounds like from Tom Herman's mouth and Chris Ash's mouth, they are ready to showcase this young man and really start his campaign as a possible Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year candidate. Okay. And I think that's where Joseph Osai should be at, especially coming off the bowl game that he had. But I really like the fact that they're not married to just, we hear fast 4-3. We're probably going to have predominantly a 4-2-5 look, right? Where we have Anthony Cook as that nickel person, and you have Overshown and either Juwan Mitchell or Deli at the middle linebacker position with your 4-down lineman, right? Or your 3-down lineman and that pass rusher. The thing, though, is, again, when you're playing different opponents, having it be a chess match. And I'm glad Tom Herman alluded to this. We have to schematically put ourselves in the best position each week. It can't just be, well, if we line up our best is good enough. I'm tired of hearing that, because your best is good enough, yes, but that also is a very arrogant thing to say when you're not putting yourself in a position to spin some things around and tailor it to the opponent that you're playing, because styles make fights, right? My boxing people know what I'm talking about there. Now, there are also some position moves that I didn't hear get named yet that I anticipate could happen in the spring. Not much discussion, if any, about the offensive line. Now, where I say that is Parker Braun, who was our left guard. Obviously, he's gone to the NFL, moved on and graduated. Tyler Johnson is a guy who was tackle last year. We didn't hear him get slide over to guard, but as we know, Herb Hand cross trains. So that's something to look out for come spring. They probably don't know exactly what they want to do there yet, but I'm also curious to see if there's some position changes offensive line-wise. Also, Derek Kerstetter, who was our starting right tackle last year, I anticipate him moving over to center. Didn't hear that voiced. If I missed it, please correct me in the comments. But that's another one where those are, because now we're also talking about replacing the right tackle. And I said this last year when Derek Kerstetter was Zach Shackelford's backup. If Zach Shackelford gets injured, I'm replacing two positions, not one, since he has to slide over. So that's kind of the same philosophy here. Curious to see what Herb Hand and Mike Yurcich decide to do there on the line. But I do look at Tyler Johnson, who was, after the Brew McCoy fiasco, our highest rated recruit in last year's class, sliding over to that left guard spot. I heard a lot of positive things about him, them getting his body there towards the end of last season. And then obviously, candidates for right tackle, Denzel Okafor immediately comes to mind, who started actually in 2017, and it was their kind of like their swing tackle guy last season. So didn't hear anything about that. And then Daniel Young was the other one. If they were going to utilize him in a more of like a H-back type of role or hybrid fullback type of thing, or if he was actually going to move to defense into the linebacker room, since he played linebacker at Westfield for a piece of his high school career. Didn't hear anything about that. So as I'm thinking now, if I don't hear it, you're still in the running back room. Now, just based upon some of the comments from Chris Ash and Tom Herman, I expect them to still hit up the transfer portal to add a little bit more depth to that linebacking room, probably from a JUCO standpoint. And just because you got bit there before doesn't mean you can't go back to that well again. It was encouraging to hear Tom Herman say some positive things about Juwan Mitchell, particularly his instincts, and commenting on that. So I was pleased with that. I don't know if that was just lip service to keep the brother happy. I don't know, but it did, to me, it sounded genuine. So happy to see that. Now, I'll finish this video off with our two coordinators, Tom Herman's brand new shiny lieutenants, if you will. The first being Mike Yurcich, who I would say, if there's anybody, probably the best candidate out of our coaching staff to become a head coach someday, I would say him. He has, outside of his play calling gets me off comment, which was weird. You can tell he has that temperament to be a head coach and somebody that I think a lot of kids will want to play for. He just sounds like a fun person. And the reason why I say that is Tran, by the way, who's out in Las Vegas right now for work. So he's not here with me right now, but Tran loves Yurcich because he's a Midwestern boy and he can make fun of his accent. And for those of you who missed that live chat a few weeks ago, Tran does a very, very good Yurcich impersonation, and he's going to get that down. But one of the things you see from him is, not see from him, but we studied a lot of these coaches just going on YouTube and looking up videos of some of their teaching tutorials, some of their concept breakdowns. I did that with Chris Ash as well. Did that with Yurcich. Mark Hagan, looking at some of his videos and stuff, looking at some of the old Jay Valai interviews, even going back to Wisconsin, just getting background on how these guys communicate, because we don't see them in front of the camera very often and we're not there in practice. So as fans, if we're shaping our entire opinion just about around how their position group performs, I want to get to know and accrue some of that personal relationship with that person if I'm not already familiar with that coach. So in the case of these guys, it's great to see them in front of the media and show, seeing their differences. Mike Yurcich obviously is very, very different from Tim Beck. And one of the first things he hit on was Sam Ehlinger, and one of the reasons why this job was, why he took this job was to coach somebody like a Sam Ehlinger. Keep in mind, Justin Fields, Heisman candidate last year, Heisman finalist last year, and somebody who was in his first year as a starter. He cited Sam's leadership, experience, football IQ. And for those of you who, continue to get on me about Sam Ehlinger and talk about everything he isn't, Sam is not the reason that we're not winning the Big 12 or not competing. But what I think Mike Yurcich can do is turn Sam into the reason why we do win, if that makes sense. He's not the reason, but I think with what Mike Yurcich can do, his understanding of this conference, his track record with quarterbacks at the Power 5 level is very, very impressive. And what Sam's already accomplished here, already the captain of a top 15 offense, already a captain of a 10-win team his sophomore year, 41 touchdowns. This guy's not a scrub, okay? And he's not somebody that's very inexperienced. We have actually a grand opportunity here with a senior quarterback, and I'm riding that ship all the way until it's complete, because I think in some ways, because the wins haven't been there, we haven't really been grateful for what Sam has given us, even from a stability standpoint alone. So I'm excited to see a guy like a Mike Yurcich come in here and capitalize on that and open the wave and the threshold to consistent quarterback play. Like we saw, I know he was only there the 1 year at Ohio State, but we saw Ohio State go from J.T. Barrett to Dwayne Haskins to Justin Fields last year. Like they keep the party going. That's what we want to see happen at Texas, and hopefully that starts with Sam Ehlinger moving forward the way we've been recruiting at the quarterback position. So stop hating on Sam. All right. The other thing that excites me with Mike Yurcich that I want to comment on real quick, Tom Herman more so alluded to this on his piece. Tempo. All right. And that's the marriage of the upstairs stuff with the quarterback and understanding how we can attack defenses with tempo. That's something that I believe we've struggled with for as good as we've been. We don't turn up the heat on people sometimes and move, just with a fierce pace. And that I'll talk about how that will translate over to Chris Ash. But one of the things you even saw with last year's juggernaut of a LSU team, they had amazing tempo at times where they just would not take their foot off the gas and attack the opponent, and were able to get, just pile up points very, very quickly, and have a play with a feverish like pace. I think we'll be able to see more of that from Mike Yurcich. That's something that we saw him utilize very, very effectively at Oklahoma State. Now, moving on to Chris Ash, obviously he's a football nerd, and you see that from him, and I mean that in a very, very good way. I'm not trying to make fun of him or anything like that. He's very, very, he's very, very intelligent, speaks very fast, and he has a lot of energy. And I think, he's the guy that there's a lot of pressure on him because he has a loaded deck, wasn't the most popular hire, wasn't the home run hire that people think of, maybe a Mike Yurcich or some of the other folks that we've brought on board. But I also look at this from Chris Ash's perspective. This is a redemption tour. He was a guy who was a head coach. I just talked about the potential of Mike Yurcich being a head coach. Chris Ash was a head coach and failed miserably at Rutgers. And, people can talk about, oh, it's Rutgers, blah, blah, blah. Well, the other coaches have been successful at Rutgers. He wasn't, right? But there's an opportunity to bounce back. We just saw a coach win the Super Bowl, Andy Reid, who was fired from the Philadelphia Eagles. That period of, Ed Orgeron's been fired before. So that period of reflection, self-audit as a coach, getting better, I think that's very, very important. We'll see how that plays out with the renewed energy with Chris Ash. I talked about his comments on Chris Brown as well as Josh Thompson, folks that stood out for him on film. But overall, he says all the right. He checks the boxes, fundamentals, playing fast, getting players coached up. I've talked about it every week on this channel. Player development and relationships. That's what's coming out of his mouth. That's what's coming out of his mouth on the recruiting trail when they're on the road. And, I just want to give a shout out also to Jay Valai and some of the things that they've said about him and some of the things we've also heard from high school coaches since he's been hired. They talked about him hitting it out of the park on his interview. And, even Footwork King today retweeted something about Jay Valai saying you would only, if you're questioning his experience level, it's only because you haven't talked football with him yet. And I love hearing stuff like that. So sometimes part of being a great coach is understanding where to go. And as Tom Herman alluded to with Chris Ash, hey, first name that came to mind when it said, I want somebody to coach my corners and get guys up to speed playing at, he mentioned a playoff caliber, getting guys, to play. He has more guys than he's ever potentially had that can play. And we see that as fans. But getting it to play out to fruition. Again, I'm cautiously optimistic with all these coaches. I mean, I've been excited about coaches before. Because they always say the right thing. As I said at the beginning of the video, they're all salesmen. But the proof might be there in the pudding with these guys. I know it's there with Mike Yurcich. We've seen it in this conference. We've seen Chris Ash do it at Ohio State. And I believe the thing that they'll have to figure out is something that Coach O had to figure out last year with LSU is that defense, the quick turnarounds. If they're playing with that type of tempo, playing that complementary football and finding that balance. Special teams will help with that as well if you're able to, have advantageous field position and take that element of the game seriously. So I think we saw what we wanted to see today. Like I said, this is to be continued because I want to have a live discussion with you guys and really get into some of the exciting things we could see, some of the ways we could utilize a Jordan Whittington. Could we see a Jordan Whittington on the field with a Jake Smith? Are they going to be competing head-to-head for snaps? Could we see, some personnel groupings where we have Keontae and Roshan on the field or Roshan and Bijan on the field? So those are all discussions and things that I want to just kind of nerd out with you guys and talk about. But guys, I'm really, really thankful to have this time with y'all tonight and break it down. I'm glad the coaches were finally able to wrap up National Signing Day, summarize everything, and then get into the nitty gritty before we head into spring ball. It's a redemption tour for everybody. Winning. It's all that matters. All right. So guys, I'm done with everything I wanted to touch on today. As Chris Ash said, we're going to give a fanatical effort. Here's a fanatical goodbye. I know that was really corny, but I like the fact that he said fanatical because we're here. Fanatic perspective. Appreciate y'all. Horns always up.